It's Miss Murphy. Let's see. Last nomenclature video for inorganic. And I will not be doing organic. Yay. As will be covalent compounds. Okay. So I'm going to go to my handy dandy whiteboard. And we're going to talk about covalent compounds. Okay. This is probably the easiest of all of them because, well, it's just so easy. What is a covalent compound? Covalent compounds are formed between elements that have very similar electronegativities, okay? And because their electronegativity values are very similar, they end up not giving and taking electrons, as in ionic compounds, where we deal with ions forming bonds or bonds between ions. In a covalent compound, we've got two nonmetals, typically, with similar electronegativities. Because those electronegativities between the two atoms are so similar, they will not give and take electrons, but rather electrons will be shared, okay? And when that happens, we end up with a covalent bond and a covalent compound. Covalent bonds are not as strong as ionic bonds because they are not bonds between positive and negative species. They're just bonds between atoms, but not bonds between ions. We'll talk more about that later. Because today, all we're going to do is look at how to name them, okay? And write formulas. We can do that in one video. So we will, when naming these covalent compounds, we will use prefixes. Use prefixes. Oops, let's spell that correctly. Let's use prefixes to denote the number of atoms in the compound. All right. Simple as that. There's no crisscrossing. There's no simplifying. You may want to write that in your notes. There's no simplifying subscripts. There's no, well, this is in naming. So let's look at it. Let's look at simple water, right? First element is not a metal. It is a non-metal. That tells me this is covalent. So I'm going to use my prefixes. Let's write down what those prefixes are. If there's one, we have the prefix mono. Do not use for first element. All right. I'll give you an example of that. 2, di, 3, tri, 4, tetra, 5, penta, 6, hexa, 7, I struggled there for a minute, hepta, let me scroll down here, turn that little light back off, 8, octa, 9, nona, and 10 is deca. All right. And remember, 1 was up there at the top. And we do not use 1 for the first element. So when I see water, and I recognize that the first element is a nonmetal, so this must be covalent, I'm going to use prefixes. There are no ions involved. So this is 2 H's, 2 is di, so I'm going to write dihydrogen. There's only 1 oxygen, right? The understood 1 there. So I'm going to say monoxide. We typically drop one of the vowels if there's more than one vowel coming together. You'll learn what sounds right. Let's do N2O4. All right. First element is a nonmetal. Let's use prefixes to denote the number of atoms. 2 is di, 2 what? 2 nitrogens. And how many oxygens? 4. So that will be tetroxide. If you write tetraoxide, no one's going to care. Okay, it's not going to be a big deal. Notice they're not simplified. You do not simplify the subscripts in this type of compound. All right. It's really that simple. Let's do 2 more here. All right, first element is carbon. It's a nonmetal. This is covalent. There's only 1 carbon. However, I do not use mono for the first element, so I will just say carbon. There's 1 oxygen. The prefix for 1 is mono. It's not the first element, so I will use it. All right, simple as that, guys. Let's turn it around and not name, but let's write the formulas. All right, we're going to do formulas for covalent. You can't get any simpler than this. All right, because you're going to see prefixes. If you see prefixes, you know it's covalent. So if you do not need the charges. So let's say that I see sulfur dioxide, right? Well, I've got 2 ways to know that I've got a covalent compound. The first way to see it is that this is a nonmetal. And since it's not a metal, it is not ionic. It is therefore covalent. And I also see the presence of a prefix that also tells me it's covalent. So the fact that there's prefix, it's covalent. The fact that this is a nonmetal, it's covalent. So I've got SO2, right? There's no prefix. That means it's 1. Di means 2. Do not crisscross these guys, okay? Tetra, phosphorus, dec, oxide. All right. Well, how do I know that this is covalent? Or how do I know if it's ionic or covalent? First of all, I see prefixes. Therefore, it must be covalent. Second of all, this is a nonmetal. Therefore, it must be covalent. I've got 4 phosphoruses. That is P4. And I have 10 oxygens, O10. Do not simplify and do not crisscross. Can't get any easier than that, guys. All right, we're going to call it a day. Okay, those are your covalent compounds. Oops, let me know if you have any particular questions with any of those. Okay.